Well, hello, friends and fellow pioneers. I have the pleasure to introduce you today to Maverick Brown, the owner of Maverick Solar Enterprises. And he just recently published a video about this project that we were part of years ago, or part of a prototype of sorts years ago called the Solar Commander. So that inspired me, seeing that inspired me to invite him to come on the show. So we're going to talk about how to go off the grid sustainably with solar for your energy, using solar power. And we've already had a lot of questions coming in about this, but if you're watching live, I invite you to comment and let me know if you have any questions. We're going to do the Q&A at the end. But again, welcome, Maverick. I'm so happy to have you with us today. And Maverick was a big part of our our story when we went off grid and we came to this new state and knew no one. And he's one of the first people that God sent our way to help us with our off grid solar system. Jason had put it all together and was afraid to see, he calls it to see blue smoke. And so through a referral, we found Maverick. Nobody else would come help us with our tiny system. And Maverick was kind enough to come out and help us just oversee the project and make sure that everything was right and give us the confidence that our system was going to work and not fail and that we weren't going to burn it, which is a very relevant concern with electric systems. So
That's right.
I welcome you, Maverick. And why don't you tell us, how did you get into this? How did you get into doing solar systems and especially off-grid solar? How did this all get started for you?
Well, I've been interested in electricity, like from being a kid. I have an electrical engineering degree. And then I guess the spark that caused the main part of this as a hobby standpoint was Y2K. I know people may not remember Y2K. It was 21 or 2 years ago. We were all afraid that the grid was going to go down, et cetera. So I built a hobby-sized system at my house, and it was a hobby that kind of matured over time. And in 2005, 2006, I started a business doing solar, and that's what I've been doing ever since. To some degree, I have kept it off grid as much as possible. That's my preferred style, off grid solar systems. I have built plenty of grid tie only with no battery systems, but in this current case, off grid's the best. And then I have built plenty of systems for myself here, various sizes for like the gate, for the house, for the cabin. And so off grid is my preferred way. And it's not really difficult for me, but it can be involved. You have to know exactly what you want to do with the power that you're trying to make. And from there, you can do some math and get to a place where you have a system that works. So that's the intro for that.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. So right now you're doing this work full time and you're doing a variety of different services, let's say. Why don't you tell us a little bit more? I know off-grid solar is your favorite, but just so that our viewers, the people that are watching right now, can get an idea of some of your experience with these systems. Tell us a little bit more about the wide variety of services that you offer through your company.
Yeah. So for off grid, I mean, we can back up a little bit and talk about the kinds of solar systems there are. There's basically, I would say, two categories: systems with batteries and systems without. And then the systems with batteries, the system design could be a single battery with a single panel that's powering a single task. So we do a lot of those where there's some kind of device being monitored, and its monitoring has to report to a server somewhere. And then the medium system would have several batteries and several panels, also has a very specific single task. And so we build a pipeline protection device called Sunflow, and that helps protect the pipeline by preventing it from rusting. That's a very specific task that it does. And then the next category would be off-grid residential style systems. I mean, that could be as simple as a gate opener, which we don't really make gate openers. We do make fancy gates, century power supplies where the gate has to have a lot more function than opening a gate. Security, for instance, monitoring, that sort of thing. And then other use systems with batteries would be like a cabin, a shed, a workshop. I mean, you can move up into a small home, you can move up into a large home. And so the idea is decide if you want to have this powered standalone. And the reason for doing so might be that the cost of bringing in the grid is much higher than the cost of building the very specific task power supply. Or if you want the reliability or the standalone nature of off-grid power, the cost can be much higher than bringing in the grid. But you find that spot where it's the best of both worlds for the application that you're trying to do. And that's really the key. You start with an application. I want to power a refrigerator and I want to power it off grid. And then from there, you work your way through how to do so.
Okay, so those are the different types of systems, but so I wanted you to kind of go further in just as we explore and dig deeper into solar. When years ago when we met, you were doing also a lot of other solar systems, just to give people an idea of how wide, how many industries use solar. Can you talk a little bit about your Sunflow systems also, just to give people an idea of the why, the things that you've created, because we're going to get into the Solar Commander next.
Yeah, Sunflow is a product that's more of like an industrial solar application, and we do irrigation control and pipeline anti-rust, and also monitoring of pipelines. And that's a niche product in our industrial side. And then we can take the same solid design and move it to the Solar Commander, where instead of protecting a pipeline, you're just creating 120 volts or 240 volts for a house system. And obviously, it doesn't have to be quite as robust as an industrial power supply, but it can be. And for the do-it-yourselfer, you can take some of these concepts about how to build the Solar Commander and move it into your own home, where you have a device or an area where you have the inverter, the batteries, and the panels, all that stuff. And that gives you flexibility to decide what the design should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I have made many unscripted solar systems where basically we just there's not really the official Sunflow looking system, and that's not really the official Solar Commander system, but it does provide the power. Like the first system you guys built was like in a tub or a box.
Yeah,
and it had everything in there, and it worked. It worked. Yeah, I mean, it worked. It works fine. And so that's not a bad method. And you've seen, I've seen other of my YouTube channels that I watch, and I'm a fan of their work, and they use tubs or boxes or bins or some way to hold everything because you want it to be safe, right? So yeah, and I didn't, I don't have a trademark on building a solar system, but I do have experience building hundreds of them. So there is and I've seen many of them that I've got to work that weren't working, that looked not much better than when I left, but they were working. I can't really take this all apart and take care of all these particular cosmetic problems. So it's not like you have to have a particularly industrial looking system for it to function, but it sure helps if you're having a problem having one that's more industrial looking anyway.
Yeah, what
So
and the reason I wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about Sunflow is that you didn't start out, or you not only have experience making small systems, that you can take small systems and scale them, and there's a huge capacity in the work that you're doing. It's not just limited to residential systems or grid tie
that's
systems
right.
or just the
That's right.
standalone off grid system. So I want just to, as people are asking questions and getting an idea of what you're bringing here, I wanted them to have a an understanding of kind of the vast palette of experiences that you've had with building solar systems. Now, tell me something, Maverick. I know that off grid is your favorite type, but what do you love about working? What you've done other things in your career, but what do you love about doing the work that you're doing right now? Like, what are some of the things that just really um, speak to your passion for doing this work, and that really help you feel rewarded in doing this?
Yeah, I think that you use this word a lot, and I use this word a lot, and it's a very popular word, freedom. Um, Off grid, building your own off grid power system, even if it's just like there's an article from an old magazine which doesn't exist anymore called Home Power Magazine. And one of the articles that was very famous at the time, for me, it was, I mean, it wasn't like world famous, but it was famous for me. It was called Take Your Bedroom Off the Grid. And it described a method where you figure out, analyze the power requirements of having your bedroom off the grid, and you build a system based on those requirements, and then you have it. It powers your bedroom. And so that feeling of when I did that, I was going to say back in the '80s, that'd be kind of silly, but in um, 2003 or 2004 is actually when it happened. It was a feeling of freedom. Like, well, if the grid goes down for some electrical storm, at least these items will still be going. And at the time, it was some lights and a mini fridge and um, not much else actually, but that's basically what happened. And so my enjoyment comes from whenever I finish the system and we've been very careful, and then we turn it on and the lights come on and the motors turn and everything is working functionally. I know that this system is allowed the customer to have the freedom to have the power. um, and other consulting I do around this after being in this industry for so many years, 15 years or so, that it's not just power, it's also other systems that need power. So you might have food storage needs power, and now if you have power you also can have food storage. um, Water is very critical for freedom. And so now that you have power, you can have water moved from places. You can also have hot water moved to places. So freedom for a lifestyle that you want to have, and freedom from its location being tied to the grid. It could be anywhere in, like Texas is huge, and there's plenty of places where bringing in the grid is very expensive or very difficult, or it would make the view unpleasant, for instance. And so freedom is my favorite, feeling like, oh, this is powered off the grid. In February we had Snowmageddon in Texas, and so uh, having been born in Kentucky, I was used to cold winter and snow and or what to do. So we had stocked up extra wood on the porch, and then we had our wood burning stove going, and then the grid would go up and down. And so we have batteries. We have the grid here, but we also have battery system, and so we're able to thrive and have the freedom to, you know, exist in our regular comfort zone without the grid. Now, was it difficult? A little bit difficult because it was very very cold, but we survived and we're actually very happy. We actually thrived, and that's the key about freedom. You can survive, but when you have the most freedom, you have the most thriving, and that's really what you're going for, is to thrive. Um, that is the beauty of off-grid solar systems. You can have the capacity to thrive when others aren't thriving.
Yeah, I really believe, and that's one statement that I worked on last year. Is just I really believe that the best way in this type of world that we live in, this in a world full of uncertainty, that the best way
Hmm.
that you can learn to survive is to first learn how to thrive living off the grid. And if you can do that, it just your capacity is just enlarges, and you have you're just so much flexibility and resilience that you can be resilient in whatever comes your way, whatever the world throws at you. You already have cut the umbilical cord to all these systems, and you can become creative when needs arise, like you said, to not
Yeah.
just survive but thrive, and you feel really good because you're not panicking because the water or the solar or whatever else is down. You've already prepared beforehand to take care of
Yeah.
that. So I love that your passion really is connected with bringing people freedom, or empowering, helping people to be empowered to have that ecosystem of freedom that inspires them to do other
Right.
things that bring freedom.
Yeah. Power up your freedom. I mean, that's a play on words, empower
Mhm,
yourself, empower up your freedom. I mean, there is
mhm,
two ways of doing this. You can do it the Rogers way, which is just move to an empty lot and then that's where you live, or
yeah,
which is fine. That is probably the most immersed way to do it for sure.
mhm,
The other way is to incrementally move the post away from you, the grid connection post, if you will. Incrementally move that post further towards the road from your house. And so we have a couple different off-grid systems here on our property. Our main house has a system capable, well, I'll say almost capable of being fully off the grid. Um, and then we brought the grid in so we could accelerate our expansion. And then as we, use the grid to accelerate our expansion, as we expand, we can further our off-grid readiness. So um, that sounds complicated, but it's having the grid makes you be able to do things faster than just going cold turkey with no grid. Um,
and you're not as conscious if you have the grid of what you're doing and what you're used to. It's just thoughtless. So
yeah,
that
well, I mean,
level of
well, and until you get the bill, of course. But yes, you're right. The idea about the incremental freedom towards off gridness is that you see the bill and you figure out
Mhm,
what you can do to
right.
make it zero, right? And the number one thing, this is less important nowadays because of things are just cheaper than they used to be. I should say they're less expensive. There are also plenty of things that are cheaper than they used to be. So that's where you really need a consultant to help you decide, is this the right thing to spend money on? Um, but the most important rule it still is conservation. Like how much electricity am I bringing into my property, which is how much you'd have to make if you decided just to switch over today, or is there easy avenues of conservation that you can make where you don't actually lose anything or you don't have a perceived loss? Um, like in the olden days, we took out our incandescent bulbs and we put in those spirally compact fluorescent bulbs. Well, I mean, those aren't that good either, actually. They save you a lot of energy, electricity wise. But then we moved ahead in the technology, and now we have, light emitting diode lamps, LED lamps. And so now those are where you can get, different colors, different color temperatures, different wattages, different filament styles, different bulb shapes. You can get any kind of light bulb that you want. You get the perceived luxury of the right light, but the energy consumption is so small. Now it's really easy to power LED lights off grid because they don't use as much electricity as an old school incandescent bulb. So it's those. That's the first rule is conservation, where then you can kind of plan your step toward off grid living. Same for water. If you have city water, um, and if the city water stops, you don't have water, then you need to have like a backup source of water. And so, what is the method for getting a backup source of water? Just like in an off grid solar system, where you have a battery, the off grid water system, the battery is called a tank. And so, you store the water on site in a tank. And so, um, how big does the battery bank need to be? It's based on how much you use and how much you want to have on hand. And likewise with the water system, that's a good analogy. Your battery bank would be sized according to how much energy you use. The water tank would be sized based on how much water you would use.
Yeah, it really, that was the first thing that we did about 12 or 13 years ago with actually all areas of our life, was look at our overhead of consumption, and like how much space we needed and how much even income and everything, and we try to just reduce it down to the minimal amount so that we would be very conscious of like what we were adding and what effort it was going to take to add more energy, to add
Mm-hmm.
more things into our life. And it just really opens your eyes to be more conscious about, you know, what it really takes to live your lifestyle, right? And to be more responsible, because we're stewarding our time, our resources, our energy, our influence. So let's talk about the solar industry. If there was anything that you could change about it, if you know, let's talk about the flaws in the industry, and kind of like, as you've worked with other companies and if you've worked in the industry for so long, what are some of the things that you see that you just wish were not so? Like, if you could change some things about the way solar is being done, and how people are being sold solar systems, what would that be?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's two things, or maybe more than two, as I consider the question, but there's two that I know um, that are like, I guess, bad reputation making methods that the solar industry has adopted. One of them is financing or zero payments or some kind of scam where it's like you can get solar for free. Nothing is free, nothing is free. So this is like a rule. The other rule is you get what you pay for. And so if you're trying to get off the grid, um, and I actually, I don't think most of these uh, telemarketing selling phone reps offer batteries in their systems. But that is one of the what I would call a scam, where you get a solar system, but if the grid goes down, you still don't have any juice, and you signed up for a 20-year contract to pay for it. That is one of the bad reputation making things. But I mean that same concept of phone selling happens in automobiles and refinancing of homes. So it's very similar. Make money on somebody's money, and you don't really have control of the product you're getting. I know I've used this analogy before. If you are kind of a person that was going to go buy a yacht, um, you wouldn't buy it over the phone and then have it delivered later. You would go down and look at yachts and decide how big of a yacht you wanted and which one you liked, and you would consider the price, obviously, but that would be a secondary consideration. You would consider what the yacht could do and how it looks and how it goes on the water, etc. And so you'd make a bit more interested approach to yacht buying. And hopefully my analogies don't lose people, but this is the truth. And then the second thing is the well, it's getting better, but there's a lot of cheap junk on the market. Um, you can buy an A plus grade solar panel made in China, and you can also buy one that hardly holds its frame together. And you never know. You could be that you may not know what you're going to get. So I try to limit customers or persuade them to only buy what I would call top tier products of any kind. So your solar panels, your batteries, your chargers, your inverters. At the same time, the Chinese market has increased the quality phenomenally. So you can actually get good things like made in China or made in India. Currently, I spec panels from Mission Solar, which is located in San Antonio, and Mission Solar assembles the panel in San Antonio, Texas, but the cells are actually made in Mexico. So it's sort of a hybrid approach. And the product quality has actually been top notch, and the availability has been top notch. And this is what I personally have on my last system that I built here, was Mission Solar. I've been using those for the last 2 or so years, maybe 3 years, on the Sunflow system and the other solar commanders I built. So you can find good products. You just have to don't buy anything without looking on YouTube for a review. That's probably the easiest thing I can say, or consulting with an installer that does consulting, or trying to get somebody's opinion about it other than the price. The price is not the key here. The functionality is the key, especially an off-grid system. If you have an off-grid system and your lights are dependent upon this inverter working, you want one that has a history of working when it's supposed to. And there's probably 10 top larger inverter companies that have a US presence. And for home-based systems, I try to stick with one of those 10 larger systems. For smaller systems that don't have a high criticality, then it's easy to go to the lower tier products. Like, there's thousands of those. It's hard to even name something. But basically, find something that's proven that you can get a review on and get hundreds of people saying this works, and then that's the product you go with. The industry as a whole is growing leaps and bounds, but we have those two different issues. One is the fly-by-night financiers of solar promising stuff that doesn't happen, and the other is the material quality. 5 years ago it was worse, and it's better now, but you still can get bit by something.
Well, thanks, Maverick, for sharing that. Have you gone to any jobs where they were financed and the system failed and you had to help? Like, had you done any cleanup for any of those systems?
Yeah, some of those systems also have like a home warranty concept built into them. And so you can get parts, and so you can request a part, and then that means it's automatically a different trip because you have to wait for some part to swap or some proof of action. Typically, I don't personally try to get too involved in those. I'll just say, here's my assessment of what happened, and try to get back to your original installer. There's cases where if you have to, if it seems compelling, then I will help you. Like, this is specifically what happened. This is specifically how it gets fixed. And then, like I say, I try not to get too involved in those because I've been trying to specialize in off-grid systems. And so those have a lot more, pieces to make them work. And so they're usually the people are paying more attention.
So let's talk about point number 2 in specializing with off-grid systems and those cheap products that people may get, that they're cheaply made and they're cheap. Maybe when you come to the rescue for some do-it-yourself projects, has that been the case that you find some products that should have not been purchased in the first place? Are you running into that more and more? How is that showing up in the people that you're helping?
Yeah, I think most of the time it's one single component that's the root cause of some problem, and replacing that one with something a little bit better is the solution. For instance, like the charge controller might be some low grade charge controller and it's just dead. I don't know why it died. Was it, I don't know what the reason is, but it doesn't work. It's not going to charge. It doesn't boot up or whatever. We can know this. And then we can understand that for the size of the system, for the customer's budget, this is the size charge controller that they should put in. And we'll ask them questions like, are these the only panels you're ever going to have on this system? And then I can decide if that matches the capacity of the charge controller. Oftentimes customers will be like, no, we want to upgrade and we want to add more panels. And so what do you recommend for that size? And then I'll ask them, well, how many more panels do you want? And then the discussion says, okay, well, I think you should have this charge controller, and I can either give it to you or I can install it for you. And then that's how we proceed. In some cases, the customer's like, this is all crap, and I'm I've been bitten by the solar snake, and now I want to have a real system. And so um, then we proceed from there. But usually, it's usually one component that's got something wrong with it, and then we just replace it with one that's a bit more robust, and then the customer's happy.
That's great. I love how you said they were bitten by the solar snake. I mean, they tasted a little bit of freedom, huh? So
Yep.
let's talk about. I'm going to show our viewers in just a moment what the Solar Commander is, the system. But one last thing I wanted to talk to kind of ask you about. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but tell us about some of the trends that you're seeing with solar that we haven't already touched on. But do you see any trends that that you see are definitely good trends that are like, yeah, go for this, you know, do's, and then are there some definite don't, you know, like the industry is offering things. We already talked about financing, and that's a big no if people can just totally avoid it and have the wisdom to uh, know also that that's a good even system to invest in, right? But you
Right.
know, we've already talked about the um, reviews and all of that, but are there some products or systems or ideas coming on the market that you would say like just stay away from, or you know, let's wait and see how this is gonna turn out? Because we have people watching that they're interested in maybe starting with that do-it-yourself small system, and then there are people that would rather hire a consultant like yourself to help them plan their ultimate system, or just, you know, have someone like you just design the whole system. And so we have different levels of people out there, but a lot of times people just don't know what they don't know. So I would love, you know, for you to just give us kind of a forecast of what's happening in the industry. You know, what are you seeing are some good things happening and some things to stay away from, that are, like you said, there's so much stuff out there available. Are there any things that you can pinpoint to watch for or stay away from?
Yeah, I think I can see three main trends right now. Um, the first main trend is the solar panels. They're tightening them up, if you want to use that term as a specification. The same 60 cell module, uh, which has been available for 20 years, it's about 40 by 66 inches. The size varies, but those modules are made by everyone of slightly different sizes, but basically a 60 cell module. And it used to be that was about 200 watts or 195 watts, and now that's approaching 400 watts in just that one module. And so the trend there is they're just getting more and more powerful for the area that they occupy. Um, the second trend so basically stick with a better brand panel, because it's something this it is the single longest lasting item of your system. They have a 20 or 25 or 30-year warranty. 30 years, that's a lot of commitment, and the prices are so much lower than they used to be. 50 cents a watt, or let's say less than $1, then uh, then that used to be $4 a watt for just the panels, and now it's less than $1 easily. And so pick the best panels that you can for your project, because that is the part of the project that's supposed to last the longest, and it has a warranty to back it up. So don't skimp on that. Also, concerning a pro tip related to panels, if you because the price of panels is so cheap, if you ordered 3 panels and you had to pay for freight shipping, I mean, that's almost the same price. The freight shipping is so high nowadays. So make sure you get all the panels, more panels than you think. If you're only going to get 3, get 6. I mean, I know that sounds strange, but don't skimp on the panel on the array size because the overhead of shipping. And then I have another pro tip later about the panels themselves. Um, the second trend is all-in-one inverters, where the traditional way is you buy an inverter, and then you buy a charge controller, and then you buy a BOS, a balance of system box of some kind, which has AC and DC breakers, and then you get another electrical panel, and you have this huge list of parts. The trend now is all in one. So there's an inverter, that has an internal charge controller and an internal AC bypass and a programming system control panel that lets you program all that stuff, and then an energy monitor, et cetera, et cetera. So the trend now, that's actually a good trend. There is several brands, like a top of the line brand like Solark, where it's all in one. And then there's GrowWatt is like a lower end brand. And then there's other, so be careful of the lower end of these, because if the one thing breaks, then your whole system is dead, right? And so if the charge controller section or the charge controller brain dies, then the whole thing is worthless. Or, I mean, the inverter may still work, it may not. So that trend is actually a good trend. It really helps the do-it-yourselfer build a system. It helps. It even helps me because I like that solar converter. It's all in one. It's easy to get it wired together, easy to get it built, and it fits in a really small space. And then lastly, the third trend is the adoption of lithium-ion batteries, in particular the lithium iron phosphate battery. Very safe to be around. I mean, all of your Milwaukee, DeWalt, all your cordless tools use the lithium iron phosphate battery. And then lithium as a trend. Lithium itself, if you import the batteries from China, is far less expensive than lead acid. And so that is a good trend. The cost of batteries per kilowatt hour is going down and down and down. And the energy density is going up and up and up, which is what you want. You want more for less. Right now, the commercial lithium ion battery packs you can buy, the top tier, they're still pretty expensive versus lead acid batteries, but you can easily get lesser known brands, lesser known products. So the trend there is lithium all the way. I endorse using lithium batteries in most cases. But you have to be careful not to get some B grade or C grade, or something that breaks and that you can't use it later. So those are the three trends: quality solar panels, all-in-one inverters, and lithium batteries. You can actually build a really top tier system with those trends in mind, and it'll power just about anything. You can power a whole house. You really can.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad that you talked about where, you're seeing that all-in-one is a good idea, because not always is all-in-one all-in-one solution a good idea. So it's good to know. For you said that was the inverter, correct? Did I hear?
Yeah, the all-in-one inverter, if it's a top tier brand, it's good, right? It's good. Mm-hmm. Because the likelihood of the top quality version breaking is lower, right? Mm-hmm. I would say, my opinion is, for the ultimate in flexibility and longevity, the all-in-one could be a gotcha, because mm-hmm. you need that specific brand. Let's say the charge controller portion of the all-in-one went out. You have to replace the whole thing, or mm-hmm. can you go in there and get just that part and put it in? Mm-hmm. And so, I like them, but I see the limitation. And I like field serviceability. I like to be mm-hmm. able to take the system apart enough to get it up and running again, with limited tools. But you still, even for instance, like an Outback, you can actually open it up and the parts are there, and you can take them out and put another one in. The pieces of its assembly, you still have to have that part in your possession to make that repair. And so at least you can get that part to make the repair. But this is a concept where making your own electricity does now give you the responsibility of you becoming a electricity engineer, if you will, or a power station engineer. You are the electric company. And so you have to have some, and it's okay if you don't have the knowledge or skills, you can get them. You can get the knowledge and skills. As you become, a pioneer of freedom, you have to learn how to dig a post hole. Also learn how to measure a battery to see if this is the one that's causing, your system to have a headache. Um, and so, it's just baby steps to consider.
Yeah, definitely going from consumer to producer, you do take on more responsibility and you have to be more aware about what's going on.
Right.
But the reward is priceless, basically. And then you become valuable not just to your family, but to your community because you're one step ahead. You can help your neighbors or help people that are along the same journey. It's not just one person knows about it. You mentioned something about parts. That's a question that I have that I'd like to just go ahead and talk about now. Are you seeing interrupt in the like the availability of replacement parts, repair parts? You were talking about you want to invest in a robust system, but relying on any energy is in a sense a different kind of dependence. So tell us about, like, have you seen any trends in certain things becoming less available with all the shortages and different things?
Yeah, I think I don't know about less available, but the lead times are on some items are getting longer. For instance, batteries of any kind are the lead time is for particularly large battery banks. The lead time is very long, 12 weeks or so. But for smaller systems, say a battery that's less than 10 kilowatt hours, those could be had now or in a week or two. Um, but when you're talking about a larger uh, integrated battery bank, it can take some time. Um, and the primary reason for that is most of the batteries, almost all of them, are made in China, and there are still a few American-made batteries, and they're very, very, very busy right now. I mean, you have to get in line, and so I typically go ahead and I'll put in what I call a phantom PO, where I try to put my name on a list, and I'll say I want 24 batteries, for instance. Um, and then by the time my name comes up, I have figured out where they go. Like, and if there's no offense if they like, I'll say, well, I need another week. They'll be like, well, that'll be 2 weeks because we can sell these 24 today. And then I'll be like, that's fine. Just move my name down a peg on the list. And so, for like I said, the larger the system, the more of a concern this is. Same for any of these parts. As time goes on with the shortages, serious manufacturers are planning and executing on their plans on time. Like a brand like Outback, they know that they're going to need this many computer chips, for instance, and they plan to make sure they get them on time. And they price their system according to the influx of demand. That doesn't mean they change the price at will. I'm just saying that they know that the prices are going to go higher for certain things, and so they build that into their roadmap for price increases. Um, I think the industry does it about once a year or so, tries to figure out the balance of supply and demand, and if the prices are adjusted. Um, I think the one trend, the solar panel prices have been going down forever. I think they'll stay down right now. Electronics prices have gone up over time because of metal prices, other prices, and I think there's a hybrid approach for batteries. I think batteries have the economy of scale to keep going down, and so that may be eroded by the normal price going up in the time we're in right now. And so batteries may stay the same. It's kind of hard to call that one. I know that lead acid batteries have gone up about 15%, and lithium batteries have gone down about that much. But I can't see that lithium battery prices will go crazy yet, go very high. I think the lead time is going to be the biggest concern. They'll still be available, but it'll just take longer to get.
Awesome. I really appreciate you sharing from your experience for what you're seeing right now, what's going on with supplies. So I'm going to add the video that inspired this broadcast, this interview was this, which we affectionately call our Solar Commander, and that's the name of this. Why don't you tell us more about why you came up with the Solar Commander and what what are the benefits, and who is this type of system for? Who does it solve the kind of the biggest amount of solutions for? Like who is this system geared for, and it just solves so many other problems? Tell us more about that.
Well, this particular Solar Commander is my office, and so I've moved a few times, and I've had containers. I've got a shipping container shop that's different shape than this one. It has a solid roof on it, and this has solar panels as the roof, as you can see. Um, there's this love affair, I guess is the right way to put it. People love to build things out of shipping containers, and I'm no different. And so, that Jason and I and John Mark were going down the road, and we went to a customer, and he had a shipping container sitting there, and he's like, "Can you put solar panels on this for me?" Because he was concerned about CME, thermal mass ejection. And so he wanted to put everything inside of a metal box, and he wanted a lot of room in there. And that became like a natural use of a shipping container to weld on some brackets and attach solar panels to it. And so I've been building these. I think this is the 10th or so. I think in my video I say 10th. I didn't really count them per se, but there's probably at least this many. And then we have three solar powered shipping containers on our property right now, and this one is my office. And the Solar Commander, I think we were in the truck sometime driving to a job, and it just came up in our conversation. Solar Commander. You have to say it with an Alex Jones voice, or some kind of voice gives it more power. Alex Jones. You got to say Solar Commander. But I just like the name. And the concept is this is a self-contained system, and so it's making the power it's using, and as far as designing a system, this metal container sits out in the sun, but now it doesn't sit out directly in the sun. It has some solar panels that keeps it in the shade. And then it's also got a mini split heat pump, so it can heat and cool the inside. And that's also powered by the solar array. And then there's batteries inside that supply the power at night, for instance. And as a matter of fact, I'm talking to you right now from inside this building that's off grid. That's a 20-foot shipping container converted into an office. And you can make them into. I think the very first one was a pantry. Like a conditioned space storage unit, pantry, if you will. And then other people have offices, studios, shops where you can have the comfort of some climate control or welding or whatever power you want. And so Solar Commander, it puts you in command of your energy production, and whatever the command center is doing inside, that's what you decide. I think I've got a customer coming up that wants to put. He already has like the Commander, and he wants to finish it out for a freeze dryer. So the command will be freeze drying food that he's raising, and then we'll put inverters and batteries of the kind suitable to give him room for a freeze dryer to also fit in there. Right now, he has a large flooded lead acid battery array that's going to go out, and we're going to put much smaller lithium batteries in there, the same capacity. And then, some tables and a freeze dryer and some supplies for that operation. So it's just basically Solar Commander. It is a way to command some power system that lets you do a task on your residence. That could be your entire solar system, or it could power your entire residence, or it could power a specific task, like in this case, an office. This particular unit also has extra panels, more than I would need for its normal activity. And then at some point, I do plan on I potentially plan on buying an electric car, and then I can charge that car with this 15 panel array. And I have room to expand, obviously, to add more panels, or whatever the power requirements are. I have the flexibility with this system to bring those power requirements to fruition.
Awesome. So let's talk about um, if people are interested in something like that. I know that it's a little bit limited to availability as far as you doing it for them. Where, where can people buy it, or where can the Solar Commander be delivered to?
Well, it's a 20-foot container, and so it can be delivered anywhere a 20-foot container can be delivered. But I would say in the U.S. would be what I would say to be the limiting factor. For me to build one for you, if you want me to ship it to you, I can build it here and then ship it to you, and then you would actually have to put the panels on and bolt some things together. That's possible. Locally in Central Texas, I can build one for you, more hands-on. And then also for you trying to build one yourself, I can provide you with, consulting or consultation, or, a conversation, if you will, where I can help you work through getting one set up on your own. There's a recipe that I have, if you will, and that recipe, it gives you some questions. I can get you some questions to ask you what you want to do, and then we proceed how to make it work. Because if it's going to be a fancy office like this one right here with beadboard walls and painting, that's a one thing. And if it's going to be more of just a power center, that doesn't have to be quite as finished out. That's what I'll say. So that's a conversation to have, with the individual person.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like, and how can I make it happen?
So if they want you to do it and help them personally in person, then in Central Texas is the region that you serve. And then as far as consulting, that could be nationwide, or really, I guess, anywhere where you can connect.
Anywhere. Yeah, anywhere.
Really, anywhere that you can that can access you, I guess, online. So I will say, I remember watching the video, and you mentioned that you didn't really have to worry about the batteries having the airflow, because that particular one that was on that video, and I'll provide the link to the video in the description, but you mentioned that that one was specifically for just short-term use, not to live in. And that's a consideration that people need to make.
Well, the battery in my office is lithium iron phosphate, so it's a lithium battery, and that particular battery is actually outdoor rated. It can be outside, or it can be inside. I think it's safe enough to actually be inside. It's that's all I can say. It's safe enough to be inside. Now, there is a caveat with lithium batteries. It's actually like an Achilles heel, if you'll say it this way, and that is that you don't want to charge them when it's freezing out. You don't want the battery to be. You cannot charge the battery when it's exposed to freezing weather. You cannot. Most commercially made battery systems of this type will have a BMS, a battery management system, and they will turn themselves off when they detect it's close to freezing out. And so that's not going to be very helpful if you're trying to run the blower fan on your wood stove and your battery shuts off. I mean, you still have a fire going, so it's not too bad. But I decided to put these batteries inside the climate control, because we had just had, Snowmageddon in February, and I was like, well, I don't want a repeat of that. And I heard other, installers consider or complain about the fact that lithium batteries turn off when it's cold. And so for my Solar Commander, the batteries will be inside. If it's a lead acid battery, I won't consider, they'll be inside the container, but I won't consider the container what I would say casual human space. You might have things stored there. That's a different story. But with the lithium, I think it's okay to be inside of conditioned space around you. Now, I do have other places where I have AGM batteries. They're sealed. They don't off gas. They're not supposed to be off gassing. They don't off gas. And I do have those vented, and I do have them in living places where there's some safety set up for those. But for the most part, these lithium batteries are sustainable. They have a 3,000 cycles warranty, which should how I'm running them should last about 10 years or more. And actually, I only cycle these about 20% of their capacity, which is a very small amount. They'll last at least 10 years, maybe closer to 15. And so the cycle count on the battery helps pay for the cost of the battery, if you will say it that way. If you say every cycle is worth a certain number of pennies, then the more the more cycles you get, the more the battery will cost. Or if you cycle the battery a lot, that's more you have to pay for the lifetime of the battery. So that's all math, I guess. But yeah, I like these. This is a good choice. The lithium battery is probably something I will pursue using for every case I possibly can. I have a few of them installed in places, and this is it's like we're at that we're beyond the precipice. We're inside of the window of opportunity where lithium batteries are the way to go from now on. But the consideration is it has to be in a climate control if you have freezing in your area.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to know. And that's why, I just want people to realize the value of getting advice from an unbiased source before they have a system built. I, knew a family that they just hired whoever they could get to come out, and they spent tens of thousands of dollars on their off-grid system, and then it failed, and then they had to get somebody else to come out and start over, do it all over again. And uh, that's not wise investing. So if you can get somebody to help you understand your area, the climate, your needs, we've touched on a few things here, but it's really important that you plan, like Maverick was talking about. You plan ahead, because the return on your investment really hinges upon not how much you invested, is how much really you planned and you designed your system, and you understood the risks that you were taking by the components that you were including, and all of that. So I highly recommend for those of you who are watching, that you get someone to help you plan. That's not the person that is necessarily going to be selling you the system. Like, get an unbiased opinion, so you are very educated investor. We want to get away from being consumers and just spend, to being wise investors, and we're stewarding the God-given resources that God has given us. And if you get caught in a storm without energy because the people were just supplying you some product and they didn't really think through with you, like, oh, is there going to be snow in that storm, or what kind of backup do you want to have, what kind of peace of mind do you want to have, it'll come back and bite you. And so it's really important to understand that you can save yourself the trouble and just let somebody else think for you, and then you'll pay later. So save now and pay later, or invest now, and then you can save later. When everybody else is in panic, when
Yeah.
everybody else doesn't have it, you're saving in stress. You don't have to have the stress. You don't have to go out and be buying uh, things that are totally overpriced because it's a crisis, or maybe you're out there running and trying to find something that's not available. And I've mentioned in previous broadcasts, I'm from Venezuela, and I'm always thinking about, well, what's that if that's not available? What if the other backup is not available? I like to have three ways to get needs met. So, for example, cooking, we have like 4 or 5 ways to cook something or boil water, because that's just where my peace of mind is, and it's different for everybody. But I think the more aware you become, the more that you're gonna want to have either redundant systems or some options, let's say. And Maverick has a favorite saying that he likes to say. Why don't you say it for us, Maverick? Two.
Which yeah,
That
two two is one and one is none.
Right.
And
So
I don't know,
as
three,
we
and this is what I added.
and I
Three
want
is
three.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
three is fun. Two
Three
is
is freedom.
one, and one is none, and three is fun. You got to say it backwards. It's two, one, three. Yeah.
Yes. So, and Maverick mentioned that Jason actually, when we first moved out here, Jason had quit his job in aerospace engineering, and we moved out here. And when after, we met, he did spend a couple of years, like 2.5 or 3 years, working with Maverick and traveling and building these kinds of systems. So when I recommend that you look into Maverick services, like we really got to know him and his character, and he really wants to help people achieve freedom, not just make another sale. There's no real freedom in just selling something. He wants to help people get established and educated, and we learned so much from you, Maverick, and we really appreciate it. So I was excited to see, and pardon the, the concert here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
I was
cicada
excited.
time.
Yeah, I know. I was excited to see that the Solar Commander on your YouTube channel, and so that's why I wanted to let other people know that you're making that available, on for people to see online and for people to get to know your work in that way. Now, if you're watching live, you're welcome to say. Now we're gonna dive into some Q&A. We've actually covered a lot of tidbits of Q&A, but Maverick's gonna show us his little secret tool, behind the scenes tool that he uses to help uh, design systems, and we're gonna answer a question that came in before the show that we were preparing to answer. And so, if people are jumping off now, Maverick, and we're gonna kind of get into Q&A. But so we close kind of this time of you imparting wisdom to people, and they're kind of at that place of maybe where perfectionism has kept them from moving forward into seriously looking at getting solar because they didn't understand it, or for whatever reason.
Hmm.
What would you say to that person, and as they're considering maybe even staying on for the Q&A? What is something, like, if you could talk to yourself, however 20 plus years ago, 30 years ago, and you were at that point where it was just something foreign, and that learning curve is so large when you're doing anything new, uh, but somebody really wants freedom, and they want to have energy freedom by having solar for their community or for their home. What would you say to them to help them understand that getting to the next level is not, it's not that hard, and they just really need to think on the things that you're going to share? What would you say?
Well, I would say that if you want to get started, I think the take your bedroom off the grid is the single simplest thing, because it's a finite size. It's pretty simple, and you can do that in several different ways. You can buy one of those all-in-one pre-built, like a Blue Yeti or something like that. There's 100 of those too, 100 different styles, where it has a lithium battery and outlet, all that stuff. But just the key there is make the choice to do so. I have this much money, and I want to power this device or this section or this item, um, and just make the choice to do it, and just make the choice sooner than later. Then after you get your feet wet and you realize, well, this is not that hard, or I can do this. Here are the known requirements, and here are the known limitations. Once they're understood, then you can figure out, well, what's it going to take to power the next thing or the next thing, and then you can build a system design that really matches with your end goal. And so you have to know what that is too. Is the getting the bedroom off the grid sufficient? Then you're done. Getting the whole house off the grid, then you know what you have to do to get there. And so I would say the key is do something. Do something to chisel out that one little area of responsibility, and make it into a freedom instead of a hassle, if you will. So yeah, just do something. Just do it.
So pick a baby step, a
Yeah,
manageable, doable baby step, and
yeah,
grow from there.
yeah.
Okay, I
And the
love it.
other tip I would give you is if you're going to do a whole home system, get 3 estimates from somewhere. Like there's plenty of bona fide installers in the world, and there's fewer of them that say they'll do off-grid work, but then get a couple bona fide installer quotes. And if they're not interested in coming out to your property, then they're not for you. You want to have somebody really willing to invest their effort into helping you get started. But don't go then. And if you get multiple quotes, you're not going it alone. You do have some feedback that this is the right thing to do, and that sort of thing. And that's something my dad always taught me was don't buy the most expensive hammer and don't buy the cheapest hammer. Buy the one somewhere in the middle, the one that talks to you and says, "I'm the hammer for you." And so you have to be able to speak hammer in that case. My analogy sometimes, but anyway, that's the key. Get started, and you don't have to get fluent, but you certainly need a good translator if you're going to get a solar system. And so, just get the wheels started, get the show on the road.
Yeah, and that's really important because we had a friend that got a quote that we felt was extremely unreasonable and would put them in debt for like 30 years. And they only had the one quote. So, they only had the
Yeah,
quote, and then our experience telling them, like, you have to get another opinion. We think this is like maybe 2 times more expensive than it should be. And
right.
let's get you another quote. Let's get you inspired enough to. So don't be afraid to get 3, right? 3 quotes
Yeah,
so that you have a
get three,
balance.
and right, have a balance of input, and have an understanding of what they're providing for that money. Um, and if you don't know, then ask questions. Um,
Yeah, and if you don't
that's
feel
the key.
confident and comfortable asking them questions, so just think about the support calls, and what would that look like if you don't feel comfortable asking them questions and you feel like a level of ignorance and they can't help you grow, then they're probably not the right company for you either. Because, like Maverick said, 20, 30 years, that's like a big commitment. If you stay on that property, or even if you're going to pass it on to someone, it's really the
Right.
wise stewardship thing. You wouldn't want somebody to pass that burden onto you. You want to establish that. And what if you pass it on to your children? You really want to make a really good first choice. And again, if you want someone to help you know what questions to ask, um, roughly what kind of system to get quotes for, and you want somebody to coach you and give you the consulting that you need, consider having Maverick do the consulting with you before and train you on the things that you need to be looking for so that you don't get taken advantage of. Uh, and again, you invest now and save later, or you save now and pay later, and it can be very painful to have
Yeah,
your the wrong system and to being in the wrong kind of situation for your energy needs.
that's right. And it has to do what you want it to do, and you should
Mhm.
only pay for what you should only pay for something that's functioning for you.
Yeah, so we're gonna jump into a question that someone asked, and it was, uh, from a beginner level, like if you were going to get your bedroom off the grid, and it was, let's say, an area of 400 square feet, like that would not be our bedroom or even our home, but 400 square feet. Let's just start with that. If somebody wanted to just plan for that and they wanted to have a refrigerator, TV, I can't remember what else they said, but just like a very basic cabin type of environment. Um, you had your spreadsheet that I saw pre-show. Is that something that
Yeah,
you use for figuring something like this out? Kind of trying to figure out like what kind of system people need.
yeah. I think I'm sharing that, and we can share the on the video screen. Yeah. So I don't know if I can scroll it, but you can. But if you
Yeah, we'll see whatever you do to it, Maverick. If you scroll up or down or zoom in,
okay.
we'll see
Yeah.
what
Okay. I
you
want to make sure. So look, I'm going to scroll up to this section right here in the middle. and then I'll get back to the video. All right. So this is a spreadsheet that I made. This is version 21, April 27th of 21.
Wow.
So this is old. I mean, this is it gets updated all the time. And so I design Sunflow products, which is you see on the left, the logo, and on the right, the Solar Commander, which is the two different kinds of systems you might specifically build for. Now, in the Solar Commander realm, you can see that there's a list of items: water pump, 0, fridge or freezer combo. This is a certain size, 20 cubic foot or so, looks like, 1. Cell phone chargers, 4. TV, 1, etc., etc. So then I come down to a load, total load watt hours. I've got 8,400. So I got 8.4 kilowatt hours. I can turn some of these numbers on or off, and then I can come over here and see how many kilowatt hours I need. And then from there, I can go down to a battery bank. This will tell me exactly how big the battery bank needs to be based on the assumed loads of 8.4 kilowatt hours per day. And then I can scroll down further and look at my location and see that I'm in Austin, Texas, and that gives me a certain amount of sun exposure every day, year round. This little chart has the calculations for year round at the location that you're located in this case, Austin, Texas. And I got the data from NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. So, the solar access data. And then I can scroll down to the last section, which is how many solar panels do I need to make 8.4 kilowatt hours a day. And so this little chart, this little spreadsheet is an easy way just to kind of like fill in the blanks about how much energy a thing would need for it to operate. I can do it the other way around too, where I know your electric bill, you consume 30 kilowatt hours a day. Then I can go up and make a bunch of settings in the load section to where I get to 30 kilowatt hours a day. So I can go here and be like, well, mini split. There's one on this unit here. This is a very high SEER rating, but what if it's not that good of a SEER rating? And I know it's not that well and I can make some educated assumptions, in that math. See here, I actually went the other way, not that well insulated. And so now I need 17 kilowatt hours. So I can kind of play with some numbers and then come up with, some use that you need. You need this much energy. And then the third way to do this spreadsheet is you only want to spend $5,000. And so then I can say, well, based on the cost of batteries and panels and et cetera, you can get this many batteries and this many panels. And that'll provide this much energy, based on the size of the system itself, it'll make this much energy. And so those are the ways that I would, if I'm trying to do a consultation or something, I can kind of come up with a requirement, an energy requirement or a financial budget requirement. And then, like I said, I've developed this over time. This has multiple tabs for different kinds of knowing about the situation that I have made over time. So yeah, that's about that. Now, the person wanted to know about a mini fridge, a washer and dryer, some lights, etc. The only red flag that I get from this discussion is dryer. So I can do that. I can actually go in here and put, let's see, most off-grid homes don't have an electric. Most off-grid homes on this particular sheet don't have electric dryer in their availability.
Correct. So I will say we had not had a dryer for, I don't know, over a decade. And then we got We did find a washer dryer combo that's a different kind
Hmm.
of. Um, it's not a dryer
Uses a
that
heat pump.
right. So we'll just have to, like we were talking about, you have to get re-educated on the capacity and your overhead. You can't just always continue as you are when you're making that first step. Um, those little washer dryers could work, but not necessarily a conventional
Well,
washer
in
dryer
our
kind of.
case, at our house here, we have a gas, a propane fired dryer, a gas dryer. So, is that sustainable? Well, I mean, not really, because if the propane tank goes empty, then we can't dry the clothes with that particular machine. Um, but in our wagon wheel of off grid living, the electric, the gas clothes dryer is still a priority. And then, uh, same for any other thing that you have. Um, what are you bringing on site? What are you consuming on site? If you have a large supply of propane, that you kick the can far enough down the road where you probably can make it through any temporary outage. And if there's a permanent outage of propane, there's bigger problems that'll be around than just the concern for propane. So yeah, the propane dryer can be put here. It's only about 140 watts because it's turning a motor. And then when it runs the igniter, that can be that's a 700 or 800 watts to start it up. And so that's another pro tip is when you're sizing a system, know what the potential total size and power that you might need. For instance, if you're starting a motor like a dryer or starting a motor like a washing machine, or there's a water pump, for instance, also has a high startup load, to make sure that you add all those together so that you have the properly sized inverter for your system. Um, that's a pro tip is that if you're going to build an off-grid system or if you're going to build a system, try to size it right size, right? So I know if I leave the spreadsheet alone, I now need 17 kilowatt hours. Boy, if once I get this power, I'm probably going to plug some more things in here that Maverick didn't know about. And now I need 25, but I didn't mention it to him. I forgot about the so and so and the other thing, and whatever. Now you need 25. And so we try to build in enough capacity surplus so that you can let the system grow while you're using it. The demands grow on it over time. Um, it's make the charge controller big enough to add another row of panels because you anticipate that you might actually need another row of panels. You can always add another charge controller, make the system big enough where you can actually add another charge controller. If that's your mindset of startup. So we don't have to go specifically down this exact sheet, but this is, and you can find these online in many places. I think the Solar website has a very similar, uh, more generalizing method for calculating this kind of thing. You can even itemize the items that you're trying to power. Make up your own list. In the example of take your bedroom off the grid, you know, um, the bedroom might have many of these items listed on this spreadsheet, and so you can pick them and use them and calculate how much you're trying to make each day. The idea here is to take responsibility, which means take ownership of your daily energy consumption. That doesn't mean you have to stop consuming energy. It just means to be aware of where the energy is going and how much it is. And if I was trying to replace this, uh, how much is it? How much is it? If you don't want to do solar at all, but you just want to buy a generator, and if the grid goes down, the generator runs. You still have to know what size generator to buy. Um, just like if you're buying a car, I have 8 children, then I'm going to have to buy a giant car. I can't just buy a two-seater. It won't work unless I take them one at a time to town. So that's an example. So if anybody specifically wants to work through this sheet to come up with some basic understanding of what goes into calculating a system. If you're trying to get an installer and he doesn't want to do that with you, then that's a clue that you have the wrong installer. If they're just trying to do a cookie cutter, you get the same 30 kilowatt hours that everyone else gets. If that's what you want, that's fine. But I think if you're trying to do an off-grid lifestyle, you kind of want to get to a point where you understand better where the energy is going and how to make that energy happen at your own location. So
Yeah, I'm so happy that you made it available for us to go through this, because the broad answer is that it's really hard to know exactly how much that 400 square foot cabin is going to need, because we don't, we need, it's unique to every person and what they're willing to do, and if they're willing to only maintain that level of energy consumption. Um, but I think what people just are having a hard time kind of wrapping their head around is, how to go from. So now we looked at the hours, the load hours, and how do you translate that into like how many panels and that kind of thing, even if they're not going to go the do it yourself route, but when they're being given a quote and that type of thing, like how do they become a little bit more savvy about being a more wise investor? So when you go from there, what assumptions can you make about the system that you need to build, like in a general sense?
yeah, in a general sense, if you know how many kilowatt hours of energy you're consuming each day, you can easily determine how many panels that would be, because, for instance, in Austin, we have officially 5.2 sun hours per day. And so if I needed 20 kilowatt hours, 20 divided by 5 is 4, it's 4 kilowatts. I would need a 4 kilowatt array. And so each panel, if I use whole numbers, if each panel is 400 watts, then I would need 10 of them. And so you can get to those numbers pretty quickly. And then I know that's a little naive. I would have to throw in some inefficiencies, and it's partially cloudy, etc. And so that's the key. Don't undersize the system. Right size it or oversize it, because there's a natural tendency for people to plug more things in as they see they can, and to no ill effect. And so that's the tip right there, is size the system right. And like I said, there's two ways to size a system. It's how much energy you have a demand for, and how much money you have a limit for. To take
Mm-hmm.
your bedroom off the grid concept is really the best one, because if you don't have 50 grand or something, you can
Mm-hmm.
do something. You can do something with 5 grand for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people don't realize that it is very doable to just get started, and you don't have to start with that 20,000 or 30,000 or $100,000 system
That's
that
right.
you have to mortgage for 30 years and all of that. People can get started with something smaller, and like I said, if you get a consultant to just help you see what your options are, then you can create a plan, like your starting point, and then you upgrade. That's another thing. If you buy a system, uh, some of the things that I learned once we went off the grid, and I will just be so honest to tell you, I didn't even I didn't even know the terminology of going off the grid. We were just in our mind, we were becoming more resilient, and we were pioneering. And I didn't know any terminology because I wasn't watching any shows. It was just something inside of us. It was like, get out now. And so,
Yep.
but as we did get out, and as then we needed energy, and we were trying to build this solar system and all of that, I learned more the importance of understanding batteries, right? So if you're going to invest in batteries, how um, I'm just sharing this for the value that it is to have somebody talk through it with you, and not just get, excited and buy something. That the batteries are something that
Right.
you really want to plan in advance, because you can't just add, you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to buy 10 batteries today, and then next month I'm going to add two more. Like, that's one of those things that you really want to invest in first, and then you can modify the solar panels and all of that, but you don't want to mess with the batteries. And so there's just a lot of things that are sensitive like that you want somebody to think through with you before you just throw your money away and get your first system built and it's not really scalable. And how sad would that be?
Right.
You take your first step
Well,
and
I
it's
mean,
not really bringing you the freedom that it could have.
right. I mean, that's the take your bedroom off the grid concept is fine because your bedroom won't get bigger. You have a limited number of loads in there, and so that is just it's a good example of a way to get started that won't
And it could be
fall
their
apart.
bedroom,
You know,
Maverick,
because
or their like garage. If they're running a refrigerator and freezer or something, they could do the calculation and
that's
do
right.
that.
Garage freezer, or I mean, basically that's the key is what is the particular off task that you want to take off grid. You itemize the task as to how much energy it consumes, and you work your way backwards, and then and now you can get, like I said, those all-in-one inverter charger combos, where it's a lot simpler, it's a lot more DIYable, and some of the brands are pretty robust, and you just get started and get your first solar system, um, and then get some consultant or get somebody to help you understand what it would take to get the rest of your house off the grid, or provide a way to use that smaller system style around your property in other places, workshop or a barn or something.
Now, somebody was asking about, is there anything else you want to say about like the, is there something that you want to speak to about the energy, like when you're dealing with solar? Is it, you're getting away from smart meters and different things that are more harmful to your health, but are there considerations, with solar systems or some of the cheaper solar systems? Are there any solar systems that are not so safe to have around your family? Can you speak to any of that where people, being concerned about that aspect of energy?
Yeah, there's uh, I would say the top tier systems um, are pretty responsible as far as how much EMF they generate. Um, I keep saying take your bedroom off the grid. I didn't mean to put the inverter in the bedroom, but it's probably better to have that in the garage with the other items and then get the power to your bedroom. So, but yeah, I think as far as EMF goes, the top tier uh, inverter systems, the good ones, the ones that are UL listed or CE marked, will have lower emissions. They will accept interference without becoming faulty. Um, and certainly some of these things are all of these things are computers, but most of them are in metal, or yeah, they're in metal boxes. The good ones are in metal boxes, and the ones that aren't have very very thin shielding around the parts that are active. So I think that's the least of the concerns with the products. Uh, the other concerns with the hazards like batteries, shorting out a battery, or cutting a cable by accident or something. So the common sense safety protocols obviously should be important to everyone. But I think for the most part, these systems are actually safe.
Well, that's good news. We had some people concerned about that. As we wrap up the Q&A, I appreciate your generosity in answering these questions that can really help people have peace of mind about just continuing to go ahead. It's such a scary thing to get into a new, navigating like new uncharted territory that they've never gotten into before. And certainly when we got started, Jason read textbooks and, he's had all his engineering stuff together, but that confidence of plugging it in, just it can be very scary. You don't want to throw away all your investing, and I appreciate that. And again, if you're watching this and you're thinking that you're wanting to try the do it yourself, I highly recommend finding someone like Maverick. And again, someone, uh, no matter where you are in the world, if you wanted someone like Maverick to coach you and go through consulting, you can do that now. You know, with the technology of being able to do something like what we're doing right here, and be able to do a video conference. But get someone to help you design what you're looking into, and help you to understand some blind spots, some things that you may not have considered. It can get very expensive. You could lose the whole project. And again, that's that's the reason that we met Maverick. Is nobody else was willing to come out for our little tiny system, but we just needed somebody to kind of hold our hand and say, okay, it's going to be okay. We're going to put these things together, and you just need like this one extra thing. But you know, you can invest a little right now, and make the whole project a success, instead of trying to go at it on your own and not foresee some of the maybe hiccups that you're going to have, and then blow up the whole system, or the system blows up at a time when you really needed to depend on it. And so it's a really good idea
Yeah.
to hire a consultant, get a game plan, and then maybe even get a little bit more consulting to help you walk you through it. And the idea here, and something that we're passionate about, something that Rick is passionate about, is empowering the next generation of pioneers. And so everything we do is to impart to you what we've learned, in the best, you know, ways that we can, and with the offerings that we have. Is that, you know, there are teachers that will just throw information out there and at you, and then there are mentors that want to impart wisdom and help draw out that desire that you have, and make it into something that you know that you can you have something to show for it. And it's not just an aspiration, it's actually a real useful, tangible thing that you have accomplished. And so I'm gonna put in the actually I put in the link how you can get access to Maverick, again, in the Central Texas area between Austin and San Antonio. If you're in that area and you want to locally meet with Maverick, please reach out. But again, by phone, or some online method that you want to get in touch, we just really highly encourage you to do that. Uh, Having Maverick in our lives really saved us getting stuck without any confidence to move forward. We probably would have just gotten stuck and then had to invest in a whole new system and put that on hold that Jason had invested in already, because somebody would help us do it. So that helped us have that courage, those baby steps to get started, and have something to iterate from. And so if that's where you are, I
Yeah.
highly encourage you to reach out to Maverick, or someone like him that wants to invest in empowering you to move forward with confidence. And the years that Jason spent working with Maverick, it just made his confidence level just I mean, it just skyrocketed, because he didn't really have someone to oversee his work. He had so much passion, so much desire, but he just was really concerned that he was going to mess up. And you can, if you don't know what you don't know. And so, thank you again, Maverick, for your time and imparting this
Yeah, no
wisdom
problem.
about solar systems and about just being a pioneer. Do you have any final thoughts as people are, again, just considering going off the grid with solar? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, the final thoughts. So I will say this: um, uh, get some help to start small, and then really establish your end goal, and work on that end goal. Just like if you were trying to build a rainwater system, you might start with a small barrel, but you know that that would only handle a certain amount. But then you know the end goal is to have a large, sustainable water source. But the first step was what? Taking that first step was getting some help, or understanding. First step is understanding what you want out of the system, and then realizing who could help you get there. And I think that's it. Just take the first step, figure out what you want, and then work through how to get it.
Yeah, it's really important. Vision is just such an overlooked step that seems simple, but it's just like everything else. If you have a list, if you have a measurable goal, then it just gives you clarity to move forward, and you're not just kind of dancing around the idea of doing that, but you actually know, uh, you have the vision, you have this, you can build a strategy around that concrete concept, and you can modify it as you go. But if you don't have a vision, it's very difficult to move forward with courage and confidence and get things done that are going to help bring you
That's right.
sustainable freedom. So, well, thank you again, Maverick, and everyone that's watching, whether
Thank
you're
you.
watching the replay or we're watching live. If any other questions come up, feel free to comment uh, below, and then we'll get some input from Maverick, or you can contact him directly through his website. And I will put the link below if you want to watch his tour of the Solar Commander. Thanks, Maverick, for stopping in. And for
Thank you.
everyone else, yeah, for everyone else, I like to close all of our broadcasts with a blessing. So may the Lord bless you, keep you, shine his face towards you, be gracious unto you, turn his countenance towards you, and give you shalom, peace.